afternoon's top stories. Minister Brantley says government is taking a two-pronged approach to the CBI program. Dominica's Prime Minister says small island states can learn from the Grenada Revolution. And Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud wins the tightly contested Israeli elections. Good afternoon. Welcome to the ZIZ Midday Newscast. Today is Wednesday, 18th March 2015. I'm Ebony Brandon. Now we take a look at the news developments in detail. Foreign Affairs Minister Honorable Mark Brantley says government is taking a two-pronged approach to restoring the international community's confidence in the Federation's Citizenship by Investment program. Prior to the February 2015 elections, the Team Unity Coalition committed to restructuring the CBI program and restoring confidence in its security and integrity. Mr. Brantley says this process has begun.
Well, I think that we've already started and doing some good and useful work in that regard. It is a sort of two-pronged process. The diplomacy is important, and that process I'm engaging as well as the Prime Minister. The reform is also important, and the Prime Minister has ensured that the Citizenship by Investment program is maintained under his ministry, insofar as we thought that it is important that the very highest level of our government was engaged on that particular program.
The Australian High Commissioner and Swiss Ambassador are the most recent diplomats to pay courtesy calls on the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis. On Thursday, March 12, His Excellency Ross William Tyso, Commissioner of the Commonwealth of Australia, visited Prime Minister Honourable Dr. Timothy Harris to discuss pertinent matters relating to the Federation. As agriculture is a thrust of both the governments of St. Kitts, Nevis and Australia, the possibility of agricultural cooperation was discussed with a goal to improve productivity in the sector, increase rural livelihood and improve community resilience as put forward by the Australian aid policy. Meanwhile, the government of St. Kitts and Nevis welcomed Her Excellency Lynn Leon Penet, Swiss ambassador, and expressed the desire to explore new opportunities with the Swiss government. The Swiss government has encouraged the government of St. Kitts Nevis to establish a permanent mission in Switzerland. Geneva currently ranks second after New York for being the most important UN city and hosts a large number of NGOs and offices for many UN programs and funds in which the Federation participates. St. Kitts and Nevis and Switzerland established diplomatic relations on November 17, 1992. Both countries have maintained good bilateral relations over the past 20 years and have benefited through mutual cooperation programs. World Poetry Day will be celebrated in St. Kitts and Nevis on March 21, 2015. World Poetry Day was declared by the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, in 1999. The purpose of the day is to promote the reading, writing, publishing and teaching of poetry throughout the world and to give fresh acknowledgement and energy to national, regional and international poetry outlets. According to UNESCO, the day encourages reflection on the power of language and the full development of an individual's creative aptitude. It lends itself to linguistic diversity through poetic expression and creates an opportunity for endangered languages to be vocalized. In St. Kitts and Nevis, the National Commission for UNESCO is encouraging the public, with the assistance of the media, to recognize the importance of poetry. To this end, many media houses will air the World Poetry Day message from the Director General of UNESCO, Irina Bokova, in addition to hosting discussions on the work of local poets. In news from across the region, Dominica's Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit says that small island states can learn many lessons from the Grenada Revolution as they confront foreign policy challenges. The Dominican leader delivered the inaugural March 13th lecture in Grenada on Monday night. The Grenada Revolution took place on March 13, 1979 and saw the assassination of Maurice Bishop and several others.
The 1979 Grenada Revolution marked the most decisive fracture of the political and constitutional status quo of the English-speaking Caribbean. Roosevelt Skerrit addressed the first March 13th lecture in Grenada on Monday. He spoke on the topic, the Grenada Revolution and the current foreign policy challenges of small island states. He quoted Maurice Bishop, who he said throughout the Grenada crisis offered a completely different perspective to that of the United States government.
And this is what Maurice Bishop had to say, and I quote, "We are obviously no threat to America, nor is Cuba for that matter. I think Washington fears that we could set an example for the rest of the region if our revolution succeeds. In the Caribbean region, you're talking about small countries with small populations and limited resources. Countries that over the years have been classic examples of neo-capitalist dependencies. Now you have these new governments like Nicaragua and Grenada that are attempting a different experiment. They are no longer looking at development as how many hotels you have on the beach, but in terms of what benefits people get. How many have jobs? How many are being fed, housed, or unclothed?
The Dominican leader says while the revolution was ruthlessly crushed by the United States government, many of Bishop's words are relevant today as small island states grapple with the shifting dynamics of foreign policy. Skerrit says for contemporary leaders in the Caribbean, the Grenadian Revolution speaks of the importance of establishing non-negotiable principles as the foundation of foreign policy.
At the core of this must be support of self-determination for all peoples. In CARICOM, this fundamental principle has guided our relations with Cuba and Venezuela, and indeed our response to the USA intervention in both Iraq and Libya. In addition, we must maintain unflinching opposition to apartheid, colonialism, and racism wherever and however they are practiced. These values flow logically from the historical journey of the majority of our people over the last 400 years in the Caribbean.
Skerrit also quoted Director General of the OECS, Dr. Didacus Jules, who said, quote, "Regardless of one's ideological or political outlook, it is indisputable that Grenada has a unique contemporary history, and we must learn to digest the pain as well as the accomplishments of that history." End quote. The lecture was organized by the Grenada Revolution Memorial Foundation, Inc. and Groundation Grenada. Alison Kentish, HTS News Force.
Former CARICOM ambassador to Haiti, Earl Huntley, says he believes St. Lucia is on the right path to regaining United States aid to the Royal St. Lucia Police Force. The island lost the much-needed assistance after allegations of gross human rights violations. However, Huntley says the CARICOM impacts probe into alleged extrajudicial killings should lend itself to redemption.
As the government has taken the necessary steps to deal with the situation that ultimately resulted in the suspension of U.S. aid to the police force. The veteran diplomat says the right measures are being taken to restore the assistance to the local law enforcement agency and security force.
As far as I'm concerned, the government has done what the United States could have expected it to do. The government, as the Prime Minister said, the executive is separate from the judiciary, from the judicial arm. So if the DPP decides no charges are to be pressed, that is the end of the process. If the DPP decides that charges are to be pressed and charges are laid and people are brought to court and the charges are not upheld, that is the end of the process either way, or the charges are upheld, that is the process either. That is the end of the process either way. So my position is that the government has done what it was expected to do, and therefore, on that basis, the United States should not have any difficulty in restoring the aid that is suspended.
Huntley says it is difficult to predict America's next move in this matter, but says it is clear that due process of the law must prevail.
Whether the United States will are going to wait until the end of the process, if it's in 3 years or 5 years or 2 months or not, I don't know. That is up to them. But what I'm saying is that from the point of view of the government has done what it is supposed to have done, what it could have been, what it was expected to do. As one should know, that even if the report says that wrongdoing was committed, people are under the constitution of the country, people are innocent until proven guilty.
Many viewed the U.S. sanction against the St. Lucia Police Force as a move to teach lessons to countries that do not meet America's standards on various issues. In recent times, the U.S. government has used other disciplinary measures, including the revocation of visas, most recently in the case of former Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. Denzel Douglas. Huntley says invalidating a visa might be new to the Caribbean region, but has been used by the U.S. government in other parts of the world.
Normally, for example, in St. Lucia, if a government is changed, I know the leader of the opposition is entitled to a passport. It now extends to all parliamentarians. Whoever is entitled to a diplomatic passport, also entitled to a diplomatic visa. But it is quite clear that the United States in the last couple of years has been using the question of granting visas to public officials in the Caribbean, has been using that as a tool to punish or to get their policies implemented, or to state their position on actions that such public officials may have committed that are not to the liking of the current Prime Minister of India. When he was in opposition, even when he was Chief Minister of another state, did not have a U.S. visa. He was denied one, and it is only now that he is now Prime Minister that he has been granted a U.S. visa. So it is not the first time that this thing has happened.
In his address to the nation on the CARICOM Impacts Probe, Prime Minister Dr. Kenny Anthony said his government has done its part in this matter. The U.S. applied a number of provisions under its Leahy Law, including stopping all financial and technical assistance to the St. Lucia Coast Guard. As part of other sanctions, St. Lucia could not buy ammunition from the U.S. for its American-made weapons, and members of the St. Lucia police force could no longer participate in any training programs sponsored or financed by the United States. The Prime Minister stated that the U.S. will only lift those sanctions if, in their judgment, all necessary corrective actions are taken. Alison Kentish, HDS News Force.
Internationally, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's ruling Likud party scored a resounding victory in the country's election. Final results showed on Wednesday. It was a stunning turnaround after a tight race.
Confounding his critics and the opinion polls, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is celebrating a surprise victory in Israel's general election. His next challenge will be putting together a stable coalition. The Premier's right-wing Likud party has won 30 seats to his main centre-left rivals' 24, but will need allies to form a majority in the Knesset. The citizens of Israel expect us to quickly form a responsible leadership which will work for them, and that we will do. Poised for a fourth term as Prime Minister, Netanyahu intends to seal an alliance within weeks. Likud says talks with pro-settler, ultra-Orthodox and centrist parties are already underway. Ahead of the poll, the centre-left Zionist Union had led opinion polls. It's now defiant in defeat. I've spoken with Prime Minister Netanyahu and congratulated him. I'd like to make it clear to the Israeli people that the challenges are the same, the problems are the same, nothing has changed. That certainly does seem the case. Adored by some, abhorred by others, Benjamin Netanyahu remains in the driving seat.
Kenya's Masai Mara National Reserve is visited by thousands of tourists every year, but locals living near and around the reserve say they're not benefiting. Protests demanding greater access to the millions of dollars generated by the reserve have recently turned violent.
African savanna elephants. This herd seems very relaxed in Kenya's Masai Mara National Game Reserve. Park officials say thousands of people visit every year to see some of the animals up close and the beautiful landscape. Kenya earns millions of dollars every year from foreign and local tourists. But 29-year-old Sikona Muntet died fighting for a share of that money. He was allegedly shot by security officers during a protest. His family is still in shock. They are part of a community, the Maasai, who feel a few in the county government are benefiting.
It was just a peaceful demonstration. Suddenly bullets were fired, then came death.
Maasai elders tried to manage the animosity locals have with some politicians here.
People are complaining about mismanagement of resources. It's corruption. There's something wrong when someone is suspected of stealing public funds.
County government officials deny allegations of corruption. They say communities around the Masai Mara are getting a fair share of the revenue.
We give 50% to 6 wards around the Mara. And if you divide that 58% among those 6 wards, each ward gets over 20 million per year just to assist those people.
20 million Kenya shillings, that's roughly $200,000. Those who say that money isn't reaching them try to entice tourists to their villages outside the game reserve.
Visitors get to see how the Maasai live and learn a little bit about their culture. These women, for example, are selling souvenirs. You can buy this typical Maasai cloth. And then take a look at this. Isn't this beautiful? This beaded necklace. And these women say they spend many, many hours making this.
But they say what they earn is nowhere near what some politicians and well-connected individuals get from the Masai Mara Game Reserve. Until a solution is found, a frustrated community waits, hoping they too will one day benefit from the animals they have lived side by side with for generations. Harun Mutasa, Al Jazeera, in the Masai Mara.
In the weather forecast for St. Kitts and Nevis, as a wheat trough moves westward away from the area this morning, a drier and more stable mass of air is expected to move across the islands thereafter. Therefore, there will be partly sunny skies today with a brief passing morning shower or two, becoming fair to partly cloudy in general tonight with only a light passing shower. Seas will be moderate with swells of 1.5 to 1.8 meters or 5 to 6 feet. Small craft operators and sea bathers should exercise caution. Winds will blow from the east at 12 to 18 miles per hour. Sunset today is expected to occur at 6:21 p.m. with sunrise tomorrow at 6:16 a.m. The weather has brought us to the end of the ZIZ Midday Newscast. Thank you so much for watching. Join us this evening for these stories and more in detail. I'm Ebony Brandon.